All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Be seated. Mr. Court Officer, please call the case.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is the file number case CBC 2010-06, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Hashim Thaçi, Kadri Aseli, Recep Salimi, and Yakut Krasniqi. Thank you, Your Honors.
I note that the accused are all present in court today. Before we continue hearing the evidence of prosecution witness W04752, there are some preliminary matters. First, the Salimi defense requested yesterday an extension of time to respond to F02451, the SPO's notification of witnesses for 19 August to November 7, 2024. The Salimi defense requested an extension until 29 July in respect of witnesses who are scheduled to testify in the first block after the judicial recess period and until 23 August in respect of witnesses who are not testifying directly after the judicial recess period. Having considered the request and the upcoming judicial recess, the panel considers that there is good cause for extension of the deadline. Therefore, the panel grants, pursuant to Rule 9, Paragraph 5, the defense an extension of time to respond to F02451 until Monday, 29 July, in respect of witnesses who are scheduled to testify in the first block after the judicial recess period, which is August 9 to 5 September, and 2 until Friday, 23rd August 2024, in respect of witnesses who are scheduled to testify after 5 September. This concludes the panel's oral order. Second, the panel wishes to clarify the matter with which the SPO, namely witness order on the next block. Let me start over. Second, the panel wishes to clarify a matter with the SPO, namely the witnesses order on the next block, August 9th to 5 September. On 10 July 2024, the SPO sent a tentative witness list for the next block of hearings. On 16 July 2024, the SPO filed F02451, the SPO's notification of witnesses for 19 August to 7 November 2024. It is the panel's understanding that the latter witness list supersedes the earlier one. However, as one of the witnesses listed in F02451 is different, the panel wishes to confirm with the SPO that it proposes to schedule the first 7 witnesses in Annex 1 to F02451 for the first block of hearings after judicial recess. Madam Prosecutor, you don't have to answer this question now, but we would appreciate it if you could look into this further and report back to the panel.
I can answer now if you wish. The filing does supersede the email. We had to make one change. Thank you. The change is in the filing. So the filing is now the current list that we intend to call in the first block after the recess.
Thank you. Now we will continue hearing the evidence in prosecution witness W04752. Madam Court Officer, please bring the witness in. Welcome back, Mr. Zarapi. We hope you had a pleasant evening.
Yes, thank you.
Try to answer the questions clearly with short sentences. If you don't understand a question, feel free to ask counsel to repeat the question or to clarify if you don't understand, and they will do so. Also, please try to indicate the basis of your knowledge of the facts and circumstances upon which you will be questioned. Speak into the microphone and wait 5 seconds before answering a question, and speak at a slow pace for the interpreters to catch up. If you feel the need to take breaks, please make an indication and an accommodation will be made. I remind you, you are still under an obligation to tell the truth, as stated by you in your solemn declaration. I also remind you that, as advised last week and before, you are not required to answer a question that is incriminating unless and until the panel compels you to answer, and that if such a question arises, you or your assigned counsel may raise the issue to the panel, and we will proceed to determine whether or not and under what circumstances you might be compelled to answer. We continue now with the Krasniqi defense recross. Madam Malagendra, you have the floor.
Thank you. Morning, Mrs. Rapi.
Good morning.
We were discussing the roles of Sokol Bashota and Jakub Krasniqi. Now, if I can take you to P847. Now, while the document is coming up, yesterday at transcript page 32, Judge Metro put a question to you about Mr. Bashota and Mr. Krasniqi, that the two of them were not appointed at the same time. And your answer, my apologies, was the two of them were not appointed at the same time. Mr. Krasniqi had been appointed first as a deputy commander, and Mr. Bashota would be appointed as a deputy later in time. Do you recall that? It was about the timing of when the deputy commanders were being appointed. Do you recall being asked questions on that yesterday, Mr. Zarapi?
Yes.
Now, you will recall seeing this interview. If we could go to page 3001, please, ending
Your Honor,
the third page.
what was read was the judge's question rather than the witness's answer yesterday.
My apologies. So it was the question that was put. The witness recalls being asked questions on the timing of the deputy commanders. You will recall being shown this document. If I could go to the third page of the PDF, please. And if I can read to you what Mr. Azim Sula has said. After the events of January 1997, we were forced to divide the duties. So my deputy, Sokol Bashota, was placed at the head of the General Staff, who carried out both duties until the period between the two meetings in Rambouillet. You'll agree that what Mr. Sula is saying here is that Sokol Bashota was placed at the head of the first General Staff and as his deputy from January 1997, correct?
I am not aware that he was from 97 deputy commander. Besides, there was no structure at the time for him to be deputy commander. I cannot explain something I am not aware of.
That these are the words of Mr. Azim Sula as it appears on this interview, correct?
This is an interview, but the reality was different.
Right. You've already testified on the 1st of July 2024 and also previously stated in your 2019 interview, and that will be part 2, page 3, that when you arrived in Kosovo in May 1998, you understood that Sokol Bashota was the director of the Operational Directorate, and he gave you instructions, correct?
Påsagt.
Yes, correct.
15 of the provisional transcript yesterday, your evidence was that Sokol Bashota was the one who communicated your appointment as head or director of the Operational Directorate in mid-July 1998, correct?
På.
Correct.
So it's not right by your own evidence that Jakub Krasniqi was appointed as the deputy commander before Sokol Bashota. According to what we see before us, Sokol Bashota was the deputy commander from the beginning, wasn't he?
Zonia advokatem.
I have explained this very well when Jakub Krasniqi was appointed as deputy commander. When I arrived in June up until November, he was the spokesperson. Then in November, he was appointed as deputy commander. During the restructuring, I have explained this very well. Now, if he had another position, another function, I was not aware of.
If we could have 1D00166 on the screen, please. And while that's being called up, Mrs. Zarapi, you will recall that yesterday you were asked questions by Judge Gaynor about the agreement in Tirana on the 31st of October, 1998.
På.
Yes,
And you'll agree with me that Jakub Krasniqi was not at the meetings in Istanbul or in Tirana, was he?
Påsagt.
correct.
In contact with Jakub Krasniqi during these negotiations, is that right?
Påsagt.
That's right.
If you could go to page 4 of the PDF, please. Yes, and we can see on this document that the proposed deputy commanders of the KLA, according to this structure, are Sokol Bashota and Ismet Alia, not Jakub Krasniqi, correct?
Kanske sagt.
This is correct, and I've explained the reason why it is as it is and how it happened.
You yesterday said, and this is at page 130 of the provisional transcript, the authority was with those who were there from the very beginning, the inception of the first structure of the Kosovo Liberation Army. Do you recall saying that?
På. Jag
Yes, I've stated that.
What this agreement shows is that Sokol Bashota had been, from the very beginning, the KLA's candidate for primary deputy commander, wasn't he?
Påsagt.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm going to put it to you, Mr. Zarapi, that Sokol Bashota was not subordinate to Jakub Krasniqi. That's right, isn't it?
Måste klart så ska
It's clear that he was not. As per the military rules, the commander leaves him there to replace him.
Right. Mr. Zarapi, you have testified several times in various courts before the ICTY and the ULEX courts. You'll agree with me that you have never said that Jakub Krasniqi was the first deputy commander or that Sokol Bashorta was the subordinate of Jakub Krasniqi. Do you agree? In your previous testimonies.
Можете сигурно, че към това.
This is what I've stated, yes. And when I was asked the question, the person who's left there, assigned by the commander, is the highest officer at that moment in time there. So this is, in this context, to be interpreted as who's the first and the second.
First time you're saying that in this court, am I correct?
По-ексактно.
Yes, that's correct.
At page 18323 of the transcript of 16 July, you are asked by Judge Partha as to which deputy commander in Kosovo were you referring to when you testified that the Intelligence Directorate, G2, was reporting to the commander in Kosovo. Do you recall being asked that question, those questions?
По.
Yes.
Intelligence Directorate reported to Jakub Krasniqi. Do you recall that answer?
По.
Yes. The question was different. It was about the reporting, how the reporting went, and I replied that some reporting came to me, some went to the commander. A part of this reporting came to me and another part to the commander, which in fact was the deputy commander in that position at the time.
If I can have on screen P1356, please, at page 6219. Page 6219. Please. That's correct. Right. Now, in the Sinovich case in 2006, you were asked by the judge, to whom did the Director of Intelligence report, and how was the report passed? Did it go through you as the Chief of Staff, or was it sent separately without your knowledge? Whom did he report to? And your answer was, during January, February, and March, reports were made, and including reports to the Commander of the General Staff. And you then went on to say that some but not all of these reports went through you. Do you recall giving that evidence?
По-ексактно.
Yes, that's correct.
You were asked specifically how was the report passed. You'll agree with me, you did not mention the deputy commanders at all, correct?
Мund je, če se kam pri meni.
It could be that I did not mention them, but I specified where the reports go.
And if we can go on to your interview with the prosecution in 2019, at part 10, page 10, you said, and I quote from your statement, I should have received information from Kadri Viseli, the Intelligence Directorate, and the legal sector. In general, they would inform the General Commander, but I should have also been informed. So here again, Mr. Zarapi, you say that you should also have been informed, meaning the Intelligence Directorate and the legal sector had to report to you, or directly to the General Commander, correct? That's what you told the USPO in 2019.
Po, edhe konspiracionet.
Yes, and I've explained the reason why. As I said, they should have reported to me with respect to military aspects, enemy movements, and other elements that are necessary for operational plans.
You certainly made no mention of Jakub Krasniqi or the deputies, correct?
Po e saktë?
That's correct. The question was, where should such a directorate report to? And I explained from the military aspect.
The first time that you mentioned that the Intelligence Directorate reported to Jakub Krasniqi was in June 2024 during your preparation session, correct?
Jo, nuk ka veç ta.
Not only now, in the preparation session, but also in other sessions. When I was asked the question, and when Mr. Azim Sula was not permanently in Kosovo, the time periods when he was abroad, then the deputy was there, assigned there by the commander. The deputy was Jakub Krasniqi, and the reporting went to him, just like myself and others.
Is that the first time you said it is in June 2024 and then in court, right?
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Now, going to the content of the intelligence reports that you say you received, on the 2nd of July 2024, you were asked by the prosecution whether the commander received the exact same information that you received in terms of intelligence reports. And this is at page 17435 for the court's record. And your answer was, at the time, as far as I remember, both sides would take the same information. Correct?
Po, kom thonë.
Yes, I've stated that.
And in the Sinovich case, and for the court's record, it is P1356, page 6219 to 6220. You said that between January and March 1999, the reports of the Intelligence Directorate were mainly on the movements of the Serb forces, their positions, and their state of readiness. Do you recall saying that?
Po saktë?
Yes, that's correct.
You've said in your preparation session with the prosecution as well, am I correct?
Po saktë?
That's correct.
Evidence was that intelligence reports concerned mainly operational and military matters. Correct?
Po e saktë?
That's correct.
Page 10 of the of your interview, you have clearly said that you have never received any report that a collaborator had been identified within the units or that a collaborator had been arrested in 2019. That's what you said, correct?
Po e saktë është.
That's correct.
You have said that you should have been the one to receive such reports from the Intelligence Directorate and the legal sector, and since you've said you did not receive any such reports, it must mean that the Command of the General Staff did not receive any such reports either. Am I correct?
Speculative.
Sustained.
On 9 July 2024, your evidence in response to questions from Mr. Emerson was that prior to the arrival of Mansour Kasumi, which was around the end of January, beginning February, there was nobody deputizing or doing anything in relation to intelligence at the general staff level, correct?
Poisaknusta.
That's correct.
Page 49 to 50 of the provisional transcript, you were asked by Judge Metro about Farhat Shala. Do you recall that?
Pomakutuvat.
Yes, I do.
And you met him because you were in Shala with Jakub Krasniqi and Rambuya. And you said, yes, correct. Recall that?
Pomakutuvat.
Yes, I recall it, and this is how it is.
Have on screen 077937 TRET Part 7, page 10, please. While that's being called up, Judge Metro then asked you in what capacity was Farhat Shala there, and your response at page 50, lines 4 to 5, was that this is a statement given by Farhat Shala in which he described this visit. Have you got it?
Poaštunusta.
That's correct.
Please. Yeah, your response was yes. In response to Judge Metro's question, your answer was yes, he was there, but I don't know in what capacity he was together with a deputy. Right?
Posakt.
Yes, that's correct. That's exactly what I said.
Now, at page 10 of the statement given by Farhat Shala, he described this visit. And let me read. During this visit, I even played the role of a driver. I had the personal jeep, so we used that to do part of the trip. I was, if I could say, the youngest, the newest person in that group. And the question asked is, how did you come to join the delegation for that trip? How did you learn that you would be part of it? His answer, at that stage, I was in Divyak. I had gone there several times. I realized that Mr. Zarapi and Mr. Krasniqi intended to go through Drenitsa zone to Shala and Lap. It was a long itinerary of rural roads, and you had to go through various frontline locations. I was asked by Mr. Krasniqi and Mr. Zarapi whether I could accompany them, so I accepted. It was a good occasion for me to visit this operational zone in wartime conditions. That's what Mr. Farhat Shala says. Now, you'll agree with me, Mr. Zarapi, that according to Farhat Shala, you did not meet him in Shala. He says when he realized that you and Mr. Krasniqi intended to go through the Drenitsa zone to Shala and Lap, he offered and was asked by Mr. Krasniqi and you if he could accompany you. Correct?
When I was asked this question, I explained very well about Farhat Shala. Farhat Shala was together with us when we went to Shala. I did not meet him in Shala. We went together in Shala. So I know what I said.
And you would not dispute the fact that Farhat Shala accompanied you on this trip as a driver because it was a long itinerary of rural roads, correct?
Posaktoše.
Yes, that's correct.
Sandra, are you suggesting that Mr. Shala operated as a driver on this occasion? Because if that's the case, you should perhaps put to the witness his explanation as to what he was doing in the various areas at the time. Or is your case that he was a driver?
It's that they didn't meet there and they traveled together, Your Honor.
I see.
And he says what he says. He says he was the driver on that occasion, Your Honor.
He also explains what he is doing in that
Certainly.
in the various areas at the time, Ms. Alejandra.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Zarapi, in the transcript at page 18359, you were asked by Judge Bartha about who oversaw the work of Sokol de Bruna and the legal sector. You were then asked by Judge Bartha whether the two deputies were responsible to oversee the legal sector, and if so, which two were responsible to oversee the legal sector. Do you recall those questions?
Po?
Yes.
Both of them, but mostly Deputy Jakub Krasniqi, because he was closer there. Do you recall giving that evidence?
Po saktë ashtu.
Yes, that's correct. That's what I said.
Your evidence, Mr. Zarapi, you'll agree with me that you have not seen any written instructions from Jakub Krasniqi to Sokol de Bruna in relation to the legal sector. Correct?
Jo, është e vërtet, nuk më parë.
That's correct. I have not seen anything in writing.
I haven't seen any written report from Sokol de Bruna to Jakub Krasniqi in relation to the legal sector, correct?
Jo, s'kom mujt me pa raporte se...
No, I could not see any reports because he was responsible to the command, and the report went directly to the command, not to me. I had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do.
But you'd agree with me, Mrs. Rabi, that the head of the legal sector, Sokol de Bruna, would know best if either of the deputies were overseeing the legal sector and who he reported to, if indeed he did report to anyone, correct?
Sigurisht që ajo është kompetent të kallëzon atë se ku ne ka raportuar.
He is competent and can say to whom he reported and before whom he was responsible.
If I can have on the screen 054739 TRET Part 2, page 10, please.
Can I remind Council about not putting these type of documents on the screen? Thank you.
I can just read, Your Honour. Mr. De Bruna was asked a question. I would like to go back again to whom you reported to. I believe in one of your testimonies, you have stated that you reported to Azam Sula. And Mr. De Bruno's response is, it's understandable, he was a commander. Then he goes on to say, I do not remember as to how many times, because we did not have time to give regular reports to anyone. You wouldn't have any reason to dispute that, would you, Mr. Zarapi?
Jo, as pak kur dëshmia e tij.
Not at all. That's his testimony.
Mr. De Bruna goes on to say, and for the court's reference, it's part 9, page 9, lines 4 to 9. He was asked, but to confirm, you did not have an official reporting line with these people. Then the interpreter says, official or unofficial, and the question goes on, official, to make regular reports on the development of your work. And Mr. De Bruna's response is, no, there was no time for anything. You wouldn't have any reason to dispute that, would you, Mrs. Rabi?
Jo.
No, I wouldn't.
You were referred to P1105. If I could have P1105, please. By Judge Bartha. And while it's coming up, Judge Bartha asked you if you personally saw Jakub Krasniqi, Recep Salimi, and Fatme Limai in the command with Blair Mkuchi. No, I'll read the question to you. Mrs. Rabi, how do you know that Jakub Krasniqi, Recep Salimi, and Fatme Limai were in the command with Blair Mkuchi? Did you personally see them? And your answer was, when I mentioned that I was also present in the meeting, when they came, I then left with Drini, and they remained inside with Blair Mkuchi. Based on this, I'm stating this. Do you recall that evidence, Mr. Zrapi?
Yes, correct.
And your evidence is that you left with Drini to the operational directorate building, correct?
Posakt.
Correct.
And you're aware that Blair Mkuchi knew Mr. Krasniqi prior to that, didn't you?
Po.
And you knew,
Yes.
respected them, respected each other, correct?
Kapas marrë të mira.
They had good relationship.
Mr. Krasniqi having a conversation with Blair Mkuchi is not in the slightest strange or untoward, correct?
Jo, askush tha që është e pazakont.
Correct. Nobody said it was untoward.
You were then asked who made the decision to detain Blair Mkuchi, and I'll read you your evidence. At page 18326, line 18 to 22, your response was, first of all, I do not know who exactly issued the decision. I do know that the decision was issued to detain Blair Mkuchi. Those who were present know better who issued the decision. I was not physically present there when this decision was drafted or issued. Just to be clear, Mr. Zarapi, my question now is, just to be clear, your evidence to this court is that you were not present when the decision to arrest Blair Mkuchi was made, and you do not know who made the decision to arrest Blair Mkuchi, correct?
Ms. Alejandra, he said it 3 times.
It's a question that came up during the judge's questions, Your Honor.
Just move on. That question's been asked and answered, and asked and answered. We do recall his testimony, you know.
Thank you, Your Honor. I can then move on. If I can call up 4D78 at page 053944, please. While it's coming up. In April 2011, Mr. Zarapi, you will recall that you were summoned as a witness in an investigation. Yes?
Prill 2011.
April 2011? Yes?
Your statement in April 2011 is, after his return in December 1998, a decision was made to arrest Kuchi and bring him before the military court to explain why he left his position. He was arrested, and Dobruna asked me for advice several times. It's the wrong document. 4D78, please. The ERN is 053941 to 053952. Do you recall saying that in 2011, Mrs. Zarapi?
Po, shumë mirë kujtohesh akëm.
Yes, I remember very well what I said, and that's how it was. Mr. De Bruna, not only on this occasion, but he asked for my advice also on military aspects and also advice offered for support and security. This was the context of the advice.
Right. I can then move on. And in June 2013, you were summoned as a witness in the Kletschka trial, correct?
Po, sakt.
Yes, correct.
Our evidence was that Lemkuchi was arrested by the legal sector and interrogated. Do you recall giving that evidence?
Măsuri.
Most probably.
For the court's reference, it's in 4D77. And in 2019, in your SPO interview at part 6, page 27, line 20 to 19, when asked whether the case of Blair Mkuchi was discussed at a general staff meeting, your answer was yes. And at page 28, you say that Mr. Blair Mkuchi was to be arrested and that the legal department would deal with him, review the reasons why he had left, and look at the damage that was caused to the unit. Do you recall saying that in 2019?
Po, sakt.
Yes, correct.
At page 29 of part 6, line 2 to 7, about who told Sokol de Bruna about the decision, you responded, Jakub Krasniqi, but we were also present then. That's also correct, yes?
Po, sakt.
Yes, that's correct.
Looking at this, Mr. Zrapi, you will agree with me that in 2019, you have accepted that you were present when the issue was discussed, correct?
I mean, that was kind of a general question, and it doesn't exactly reflect what the witness said he was present for.
Sustained.
In the course of your testimony to this court, Mr. Zarapi, you have tried to distance yourself from this by saying that you were not present when the decision was made. And the record is very clear, I'm putting it to you, that you have stated several times in evidence here and before that Sokol de Bruna consulted you about the cases he was dealing with, including the case of Blair Mkuchi.
Spare din dan disa pjesë.
First of all, let us separate this in several parts about the advice. I was clear on what issues he consulted me. The decision for his arrest, I was not present when that decision was taken. I was there before that decision was taken, but I was not there when it was taken. So there is a distinction and difference between things that we are discussing.
Your answer to Judge Bartha that Jakub Krasniqi oversaw the legal sector in 2019, part 6, page 30, in the case of Blair Mkuchi, you've said that you not only did you advise De Bruna, you also made recommendations to Sokol de Bruna to receive information and take all the notes and proof so that such cases could then be judged in peacetime. Do you recall saying that in 2019?
Po, sakt, kur thoshte
Yes, correct. Taking notes means information on everybody, those who cannot be processed at that particular time, so that that can be processed after the war and proper measures can be taken if necessary.
Since you'll agree with me that Sokol de Bruna went to you for advice and recommendations, not Jakub Krasniqi, correct?
Jo, ashtu. Këshilli
No, not correct. I gave advice on military aspects and I explained what my advice was. When we talk about the responsibility was of the commander and of the cabinets of the commander. And when the commander is not there, it's the deputy, regardless of whether it's the first or the second deputy, whoever he left him there, he is responsible. This is in line with the system of leadership and command.
Right. And in 2019,
Despite the fact that we were not a regular army, there was some order.
thank you. In 2019, at part 6, page 31 of your interview with the SPO, you told them that you don't know whether De Bruyne consulted with other members of the General Staff. That's right, isn't it?
saktë është.
That's correct. He did not report to me for me to see whether he was consulting or not.
And if I can read to you what Sokol de Bruyne has said to investigators when asked who had the authority to order the release of a convicted person, this is at 054739, part 8, page 10. He says, the one who convicted him, the court. This is how we acted with Brahim Kuchi. Because we convicted him, we released him. You wouldn't dispute that, would you?
Jo, s'kam shka konsultoj, është drejta e atij.
I have no reason to dispute that. That's his right.
With me that Sokol de Bruyne, as the head of the legal sector handling this case, should know who had the authority to release Brahim Kuchi, correct?
Po saktë.
Yes, correct.
And if I can just read to you who else Sokol de Bruyne says had the authority to order the release. For the court's reference, it's at 054739, part 8, page 13, lines 15 to 18. Investigator asks Mr. de Bruyne, so it was authority of Bism Zerapi, he had the authority to order the release? Mr. de Bruyne responds, of course, because he had to undergo the rank. Do you dispute that, Mr. Zerapi?
Lexoni edhe një herë.
Can you please read it once again?
So it was the authority of Bislim Zerapi. He had the authority to order the release. And Mr. de Bruyne's response is, of course, because he had to undergo the rank.
Hierarkia është diçka tjetër.
Hierarchy is something different. Overseeing somebody is something different. I was not his supervisor and could not say to him, release him or do not release him. It was his responsibility and of the command. I could only give advice.
Sokol de Bruyne did consult you about the release of detainees when the NATO bombing started, didn't he?
Konsultimi është po. Tjetër se është
Consulting, yes, but consulting is completely different from what you suggested earlier.
That included the case of Blair Mkuchi, and you advised Sokol de Bruyne to release him, didn't you?
nuk ka veç Blerim Kuçit, po gjithë që ka.
Not only Blerim Kuchi, but whoever was a soldier at the time to be released, to return to their units from where they were brought, and then after the war to take the adequate measures from legal point of view.
And in fact, Blarim Kuchi was released, wasn't he?
Jo vetë Blerim Kuqi, po të gjithë.
Not only Blerim Kuchi, but everyone, because with the starting of the bombing, all the soldiers dispersed and then returned to their units and continued to fight with their units until the end of the war.
Mr. Zerapi, that Kurtash Fundai has given evidence before this court.
E di që ka dhënë dëshmi. Po.
I know that he gave testimony, yes.
I can read to you his evidence on the case of Blarim Kuchi. This is on the 25th of June, 2024, transcript 17149 to 1750. He's asked, do you recall speaking with Bislim Zerapi about the Blarim Kuchi case? Yes, I discussed this with Bislim Zerapi in detail, and I told him that Blarim Kuchi's case needs to be clarified because he did not desert and that there is a mistake in interpreting his case and his arrest. Because Blarim Kuchi just back then had, it was very clear, the help he had given to the KLA. And Mr. Fondai was then asked, no doubt you thought because Bislim Zerapi was the chief of staff, he was in a position to do something about the Blarim Kuchi case, correct? And his answer was, I was convinced that Bislim Zerapi's statement had to be decisive for Blarim Kuchi's fate, and that is why I communicated with Bislim Zerapi, clarifying in detail his going to Albania. Do you have any reason to dispute what Mr. Fondai says?
Është dëshmia e tij, nuk më takon.
That's his testimony. I cannot dispute it.
And you will recall that we have seen and heard your evidence earlier that when it came to the release of the 5 elderly Serbs, Mr. Zerapi, you had a conversation with Sulaiman Salimi and you told him to release them, correct?
Gjë normale që ka qenë kërkesa të
It's normal that request could be made, and I, as chief of staff, also made a request for them to be released, and then it's on him to decide what measures he will take. First of all, he was not supposed to act like this, but he decided to act, and at the time we had such actions undertaken.
You were referred by Judge Bartha to the case of Cendescu and Jacob Kusrati, and you were then referred to page 37, part 3 of your interview with the SPO, when you said you talked to members of the KLA General Staff about this case when you became the Chief of Staff. Do you recall that?
Po.
Yes?
It is at transcript page 18373. And it is after this that you issued the order of the 28th of November 1998, correct?
Jo vetëm për këtë rast, po
Not about this specific case, but I've explained that there were complaints by zone commanders, but this was issued in the context of that case. There were different actions at the time that had negative impact on the KLA.
Page 11 of your interview with the SPO in 2019, you have stated that you had consulted with the commander and it was you who gave instructions on how things had to go forward and how they had to act in the future. Do you recall saying that?
po sakt.
That's correct, yes.
Also said yesterday that zone commanders, civilians, and soldiers came to you with the complaints, right? And you've just said that.
Nuk ishte veç ankesa drejt meje.
These were not only complaints addressed to me only, but they were also addressed to other members of the staff. Information was collected from commanders, from zones, from staffs, and just like I did, others also collected information, and such reports were then compiled.
Yes, but you'll agree with me that they came to you because they knew or believed that the operational issues were your responsibility, correct?
Sigurisht që pjesët operative kanë qenë të mia.
The operational issues were mine as chief of the operations director, and this is not disputable.
And at page 34, lines 9 to 14 of the transcript yesterday, Judge Metro asked you if operational decisions were issued by other members of the General Staff who were on the ground in Kosovo, and your response was that in the absence of the commander, the deputy approves or allows for such actions or operations. Do you recall saying that?
Po saktë?
Yes, correct.
Mrs. Rapi, that it was after you raised the complaints you had received with Azim Sula, the general commander of the army. Azim Sula ordered you to send that instruction, or he instructed you to issue the order of 28th of November to stop all the negative incidents, correct?
Po saktë, këto e kam thënë edhe.
Yes, correct. This is what I said then and what I'm saying now.
Jakob Krasniqi to send the 28th November 1998 order around, did he? It was you he instructed to do that, isn't it?
Po saktë është.
Yes, correct.
Part 5, page 11 of your interview, you've said, when the commander was not present at the time, it was you that issued the order to all the zone commanders, correct? That's at part 5, page 11 of your interview.
Po tek cilës intervistë?
Excuse me, can you please tell me which interview is this and the date?
Please. Part 5.
Please say it again, you talked over him.
My apologies, Your Honor. The reference is part 5, page 11 of your interview. I can read it to you. There was myself, Rajab Salimi, Lahi Brahimai, and Fatmi Limai. Things were discussed, and I told them the commander was not present at the time. I stated that I had consulted with the commander, and I gave instructions how things had to go forward and how they had to act in the future. And all the zone commanders and the units had to be notified about this. That's what you said in 2019, right?
Saktë.
Right. I said what you just read, yes.
Are we taking a break at 10 o'clock, Your Honor? Would it be appropriate to take it now?
We'll give you a 10-minute break, witness. Thank you. You may leave the courtroom with the usher. After the break, you'll have 20 minutes, Ms. Alejandra, to the end of your time.
Yes, Your Honor.
We're adjourned.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated, please. Madam Usher, please bring the witness in. All right, Mr. Zarapi, we now will continue with questions from the Krasniqi defense.
Mrs. Rapi, you'd agree with me that in answer to the questions that the judges have put to you on the 16th and 17th of July, you have for the first time, I'm going to put some propositions to you, you have for the first time said that the Intelligence Directorate was reporting to Jakub Krasniqi. You have said that Jakub Krasniqi oversaw the legal sector, and you have said that Jakub Krasniqi had the authority to order the arrest of Blem Kuchi, and you have for the first time also said that one of the three at the command issued the order to arrest Blem Kuchi, and that's at 18327 of the transcript on 16th of July. Do you agree with me?
Po i kam thënë këtu.
Yes, that's what I said.
Now, in 2019, when you were interviewed as a suspect, you didn't know at that time, did you, Mr. Zarapi, whether you were going to be charged?
Jo,
No.
And if I can call up DJK 00924. While that's coming up. Mrs. Rapi, have you heard of Milem Zeka, a well-known journalist in Kosovo?
po,
Yes.
Right. Mrs. Rapi, this is an article by Milem Zeka dated the 3rd of August 2015. Published in 2015. You'll agree with me now, if I can take you to the line that reads, who will be indicted? These are the first four. And the first person on that list is Bislim Zerapi, former Chief of Staff of the KLA General Staff.
Is this something that the judges brought up? Because these are follow-up questions to the judges' questions. You're
Yes, Your
introducing
Honor.
new material.
Yes, Your Honor, and it is my submission, Your Honor, that maybe we can do this in the absence of the witness. Right, because for the first time, in answer to the judge's questions, this witness has alleged new facts against Mr. Krasniqi. He has never made such an averment in the ICTY and in all the ULEX cases that he has
I'm
testified.
talking about this document that you're showing. What does that have to do with this?
Your Honor, it is our position that this witness's evidence has evolved. And when the judges put questions to him, he appeared to feel compelled to give answers that the judges were looking for. That's our position, Your Honors. And I have a duty, I have an ethical duty to allow him to respond to my questions.
Please take that document down. This document has nothing to do with the judge's questions. Please discontinue this particular line and go on.
Mrs. Rapi, given it's my position that you have changed your account in several areas, you now say that Jakub Krasniqi oversaw the legal sector, a suggestion that so-called De Bruyne reported to Jakub Krasniqi, the Intelligence Directorate reported to Jakub Krasniqi, and as I mentioned earlier, that Jakub Krasniqi had the authority to order arrest. I'm putting it to you that you have deliberately exaggerated Jakub Krasniqi's authority and role. Do you agree?
Speton Aspakic,
I don't agree because I have not exaggerated the role of Jakub Krasniqi at all. I answered the questions relating to responsibilities, military responsibilities.
Right, and I must ask you, has anyone influenced you or asked you to blame Jakub Krasniqi in the manner that you have and pin more responsibility on Jakub Krasniqi to make him the fall guy despite the fact that you know the evidence that you have given is false?
First of all, I have not been under any pressure from anyone. I explained what were the responsibilities, who had the responsibilities, answering to questions. I'm explaining the same, who had what responsibilities. I have not made any changes to my prior statements compared to my testimony given in court. Under oath to tell the truth, what I know, what I saw, and what I witnessed. Nothing else. If you're claiming that when we were initially summoned as witnesses, we were suspects and witnesses, then every single person who was summoned as a witness in 2019 was also potentially a suspect. I have only explained the truth of the reality of a system that was in place at the time.
Then I'm going to put it to you, Mr. Zerapi, that you're here as a suspect, you're here with your counsel, and the evidence that you have given here is false, and it's to save your own skin. Mr. Zerapi. Thank you, Your Honor.
Asked and answered.
Sustained. Mr. Zarapi, you have completed your testimony. We appreciate you having been here with us and being patient and doing your best to answer the questions. We wish you well in the future, and we allow you to now leave the courtroom with our thanks for being here. Mr. Duty Counsel, we also thank you for being in attendance and for assisting Mr. Zarapi.
Thank you, Your Honors. It has been an honor and a privilege to be part of this trial.
If there's nothing further, doesn't appear to be. Oh, Mr. Emerson?
Taking my headphones off. Was Your Honour asking, does anybody have any other issues? Yes. Very briefly, we've notified the SPO in writing this morning that we are requesting a review of the translation of the ERN numbered KLA General Staff Provisional Regulations of Intelligence Subunits in Combat. The document that I was dealing with when I was asked, it was pointed out to me that it was not appropriately connected to the judge's questions, because we have official ULEX translations which indicate that they are in fact reconnaissance, not intelligence, and indeed that there's a mistranslation in the title, and indeed the content of the document makes that clear. So we're going to ask that the title of the regulations be reviewed by the SPO so that that mistranslation for intelligence can be corrected, because clearly the document was admitted in evidence at the ICTY with a different title, which is transmogrified into intelligence somehow in the SPO process. So may we put that on the record and deal with it further inter partes over the adjournment.
The record is made. Anything from anybody else? We're adjourned until the next meeting.
All rise.